Get ready for another curveball from female audiences. You're watching Beyond the Trailer's review of Cinderella.
Miss, what did he call you?
Never mind what they call me.
I'm sorry.
It's not your doing.
Nor yours either, I'll bet. I hope to see you again, miss.
And I you.
Ella, you have more kindness in your little finger than most people possess in their whole body.
It was my mother's old dress.
It would be an insult to take you to the palace dressed in these old rags. You shall not go to the ball.
Excuse me. Why are you crying?
Who are you?
That's better. My fairy godmother.
When the first trailer for Disney's live-action Cinderella debuted, it left many scratching their heads. While the Mouse House had previously applied clever twists to their live-action remakes of their classic animated films, this one seemed like a straight adaptation of the 1950 original. And while later trailers seemed to promise a little more depth, a storyline for the prince, the wicked stepmother, and king in cahoots, it all still seemed rather simple. But it turns out that Disney's live-action Cinderella is perhaps deceptively simple. While the film doesn't appear to be on the media's radar, there are signs that audiences are well aware of it. For instance, the MAC line of cosmetics for the film debuted early online and has already sold out. Now, Free as a Butterfly lipstick is available on eBay for $100, and if you want the whole set, it's going for more than $1,000. Disney is also set to release a line of designer shoes that echo Cinderella's famous glass slippers, with Jimmy Choo, Stuart Weitzman, and Ferragamo participating. Talk about merchandising! And this won't be the first time Hollywood will have underestimated the female audience, both in terms of wanting to indulge their girly side and their sexuality. Twilight, The Hunger Games, Frozen, Maleficent, The Fault in Our Stars, 50 Shades of Grey, the list is getting longer and longer. Female audiences want to see their heroines have it all, both a strong independent spirit and romance, while looking amazing. Yes, Frozen and Maleficent seem to say the opposite when it comes to romance, but remember that all these movies detail different types of relationships with men. Not all men are Prince Charming. Some are bad for us, and some don't seem like Prince Charming at first glance. And women are loving it that movies today are depicting that on the big screen. Now, of course, Cinderella does boast a literal Prince Charming, and it will be interesting to see if the original stereotype still holds as much sway as it once did, and if he is the same old stereotype. That's perhaps the biggest question here. With all this progress in mind, is Disney's live-action Cinderella another step forward, a timeout, or a step back? We'll have to wait and see, as again, the ad campaign has kept the film largely under wraps. All that we have seen are lots of sparkle and cleavage, and posters that look like a paperback romance novel. And as backup, there's the Frozen Fever short where Elsa throws Anna a birthday party rather than actually rule her kingdom. Step forward, time out, or step back indeed. And all these mixed messages are driving guys crazy. What do women want?
So now that I've actually seen Cinderella, I think a more accurate question is, what do you want from this movie? If you're just looking for eye candy, then boy, are you in luck, because this is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, if not the most beautiful film. It's like the cinematic equivalent of a Fabergé egg. But then remember, Fabergé eggs are hollow. Yes, sadly, this also happens to be one of the most superficial films I've ever seen. Now, it does spend quite a bit of time talking about the importance of kindness and courage, but then, in the same breath, every single time, without fail, it then continues on saying, "But did you see how beautiful Cinderella is?" And I was sitting there being like, what are you trying to say, movie? Because I'm getting some significantly mixed messages here. And I think that the problem, when you get right down to it, is that no matter how hard the movie might try to say otherwise, and I think quite frankly it doesn't try that hard, Cinderella is a story based on instant attraction. And instant attraction is based on physical appearance. For instance, the prince keeps saying, "I swear I like Cinderella for more than just her looks." But even in the audience, you're sitting there going, "Hey buddy, I've watched the extent of your interaction with Cinderella. You guys have not spent a lot of time together. You couldn't possibly like her for any other reason. You don't know anything about her besides the way she looks, really." And I think that if they wanted to really drive home the point about inner beauty, they shouldn't have cast such a traditionally attractive actress as Cinderella. Now, as for the message of kindness and courage, which, by the way, I think the movie mistakes for endurance, because I don't see a lot of courage going on in this movie, particularly from Cinderella. All it ends up doing is promoting a really antiquated idea of the ideal woman. Someone who is very beautiful in a traditional sense, someone who is incredibly kind, and also someone who is very self-sacrificing. Now, these are, of course, important qualities, particularly the kindness and the self-sacrificing. But they really only paint a picture of the ideal daughter, wife, and mother. And I think at this point, society has made it clear that women are much more than that. Those are labels and certainly parts of women's lives, but they have many more interests and character traits. But that is not the case with Cinderella. She is 100% only the perfect daughter, only the perfect girlfriend, and then potentially wife. No spoilers! I'm doing a spoiler review, and I think some of you know how this ends to some degree, obviously. And then, of course, you're to assume she'll be a wonderful mother. But there's nothing else there. And I know some of you have been defending this story and saying, oh, well, Cinderella couldn't leave because of the time period she lived in, and women couldn't go out on their own, so that's partly why she was a prisoner in her own house. But you're not going to find that kind of realism or depth here. In fact, someone in the movie actually asks Cinderella point blank, why don't you leave? And instead of her saying, where would I go? Society doesn't allow me to leave as I am a woman. I have no money. All these very valid reasons are not referenced. Instead, she gives an answer, I don't want to give a spoiler, but her answer is right in line with this antiquated idea of the perfect woman. Now, speaking also of the times that they lived in it at the period of this film, that's something that's kind of explored with Cate Blanchett's character, the evil stepmother, Lady Tremaine. And those things are very interesting, but again, they're only touched upon. Because you see this beautiful woman who's clearly very clever, yet she is, restricted. She has her hands tied by society. And that, again, only hinted at. And I think that could have made for a much more interesting movie. But even with, and I have to say, Cate Blanchett's hands are tied to some degree as well here because it's not her movie. Unfortunately so. I think it would have been much better if it had been her movie, just as Angelina Jolie got her own movie as Maleficent. But with what she's given here, she so knocks it out of the park that she's really the main reason, I think, to see this film. Unless, of course, you just want the eye candy, or maybe you do want the fairy tale. Maybe you still feel that antiquated ideal of how a woman is not antiquated. Maybe that's something that you think should be brought back, and then you'll be very pleased with this movie. So I have to say, at the end of the day, this is a film that I think, in its simplicity, skews quite young, and because it's a fairy tale. However, I would caution you that just be aware of some of the messages, the bigger messages that might be seeping through to young impressionable minds, little kids who might be the target audience for this film. And again, other people might enjoy it as well, but as someone who wants to see women, be more than just wife, daughter, and mother, I think a number of times watching this movie, I was kind of frustrated. Now, before I sign off, and also there's a spoiler review for this, so I'll go into much more detail, but I want to just point out that I made a video about fairy tale porn. This was, this movie was exploding, and most people got what I was saying, but there were a couple of people who were offended, and were like, oh, how dare you call this lovely family film anything to do with porn. But I have to say, go watch the movie, as I'm sure many people will, but just take a look at the dance scene, the first dance between the prince and Cinderella. And just tell me if you don't think that is, a very sly substitution for a sex scene. I mean, there's so much heavy breathing during that sequence, that dance, that I'm surprised that's not what everyone was talking about the next day instead of Cinderella's glass slippers. They're like, I know how she got the prince. She wasn't afraid to go all, I have to say it, 50 Shades or Twilight on the dance floor. So that's my review of Cinderella. I'm very eager to see how everyone else reacts to the film. Leave your thoughts down below if you've seen it. If not, we can talk about it as well. And then, of course, I hope you'll check out my spoiler review after you've seen the film. All right, bye.